I'm really excited about today's session where we'll be launching Tea with a Pony nationwide. I'd also like to introduce Lucy Wake, who works at RDA National Office and is project managing the national rollout of Tea with a Pony.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today.
I'd like to kick off with a short video from BBC Breakfast to give you a bit of a taste of what today will all be about.
To her, and it says very much. It brings a lot of happiness to her, and it seems to have helped her memory. I'm not quite sure how, but it has. More than anything, it's been like a light has turned back on again. Well, it triggers specific memories about family and about horses and about happy times. The present fades away. It takes her back to just warm memories.
John had been in care since February of last year, and it was actually the first day that we'd been somewhere together that was different. It gave us things to talk about afterwards. Some lovely photographs to look at even now on his wardrobe door.
Coming out on a trip like this will just mean that the residents are feeling that they can leave where they are, so they don't feel like they're stuck there. It's something a bit more normal to do.
Yeah. So it sparks any little memory, whether it be childhood, happy memories, and then from that we get some fantastic reminiscence sessions.
We've got some amazing speakers today, and I'd like to thank them all as they've all been part of a working group to bring this idea into RDA. I would also like to thank both Jerry Porter and Denise Robertson, who are also an integral part of the working group. I'd also like to thank the carers and those living with dementia that have helped make this project possible. Without them and without their feedback, this project wouldn't have happened in the way that it has. We're also really pleased to have the support of the Alzheimer's Society and are running this conference as part of their Dementia Action Week 2021. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our chair. Dr. Meg Hardman was brought up in Norfolk, went to Guy's and St Thomas's Medical School and joined the Army whilst at university. She qualified in 2000 and did GP training in the Army, working in Germany, Canada, and deploying to Afghanistan in 2007. She left the Army in 2008 when she had the first of 3 children. She moved to Suffolk in 2010 and started the slow renovation of a dilapidated thatched farmhouse whilst working as a GP. She was a GP partner for 5 years and left this to become a locum, both in general practice and accident and emergency, and also spend more time working in pre-hospital care, covering horse trials and racing. She's now chairman of the Medical Equestrian Association and honorary medical advisor for RDA. When not working, she'll probably be riding. So Meg, over to you.
Thanks so much, Anna. Good morning, everyone. It's amazing to be involved in something which so many people have sort of tapped into. And as someone who's a bit on the peripheries, it's amazing to see the energy and enthusiasm and knowledge and skill that people have brought to this, particularly to be able to do this at the sort of closing bit of a pandemic, if I can be as bold as to say that. So this morning, the admin bit of me is just going to say that if you've got any questions, can you use the Q&A function? So that's the little bubble in the bottom of your screens. If you've got any questions, type them in and we'll go through them at the end rather than interrupting people's presentations as we go along. And this stops you forgetting any questions because I will always forget them unless I write them down. So this morning we're starting off with Claire Jenkins. So Claire started as a volunteer at Cotswold RDA 8 years ago, and she's been general manager for the last 6 years. And when she talks, it's really evident why she became the general manager so quickly, because she's really, really energetic, enthusiastic, and is clearly a real person to drive things forwards. 2 years ago, she became a trustee for Riding for the Disabled UK, working with the National Training Centre. Her Cotswold RDA group is one of the largest in the country, and I'm desperate for an invite, hint, hint. And it's a very innovative group, embracing not just riding lessons, also ASDAN qualifications, endurance, show jumping, and of course, tea with a pony for people living with dementia. Claire considers it a real privilege to be part of RDA and loves the difference it makes for people. But I think the RDA is probably really privileged to have her as well. After Claire, we've got some words from Mike Bushell, and he's got a really lovely presentation showing his enthusiasm about tea with a pony. Next, we have Lorna Cook. Lorna's a retired occupational therapist. I'm not sure how she's got time to, how she ever had time to work, because she seems to be very busy. She's had 30 years of being a champion of the importance of meaningful activity for people in a variety of clinical settings where she worked in West Yorkshire. She is an expert at enabling people to engage with the activities that matter to them through activity adaptation and the removal of barriers. She's got a wealth of experience of people, of working with people living with dementia and palliative care. And her RDA involvement started in Singapore in 2004, where she started as a sidewalker instructor and then a board member. And thirdly, we have Ali Rood. So Ali was a town planner for 20 years and decided then to follow her interests in the human-animal bond. She graduated with a research master's in anthrozoology from Hartbury University in October 2019. She's a qualified equine facilitated learning practitioner, and her research focused on the use of equine assisted activities for people living with dementia. There's little research to date in this field, and she's developed and implemented a really high quality study to inform the advancement of the evidence base for these activities. She's a member of the National Riding for the Disabled Association UK's Dementia Services Development Group, which is not a catchy title, and it needs some abbreviating. This developed the RDA with the pony guidelines and offers equine assisted activities for people with dementia and other long-term conditions. She has a particular interest in the monitoring and evaluation of these activities to shape future research and development. And she has also volunteered at the Cotswold RDA, which pioneered tea with a pony sessions and conducted her research here. None of you will have failed to notice what a very difficult time it's been. There are so many of us that look after or in some way involved with people with dementia. I'm just going to remind you what dementia actually is. So it's a group of neurodegenerative diseases, and it involves the loss of cognitive functioning, thinking, remembering and reasoning, and behavioural abilities to such an extent that it interferes with a person's daily life and activities. And I think it's easy to get involved in the sort of more clinical aspects of that. And actually what's really lovely about Ali's research is it's good quality research, which demonstrates that actually we can have an impact on people living with dementia, which not only benefits them, but also benefits the people around them. And I think in a year where so many patients with dementia, sorry, I also refer to them as patients, so I apologise, people with dementia have had such a difficult and isolated time. And there's so much that's gone unnoticed, and that's their physical needs as well as their spiritual and psychological needs. And the fact that the RDA is pushing to really focus on that is just amazing. And I think you should all be really proud of yourselves. So I'm going to hand over to Claire, please, now.
Thank you very much, Meg. And you have an open invitation to Cotswold RDA at any point. I'm absolutely delighted to share with you the story of how Tea with a Pony started at Cotswold RDA at Cheltenham Racecourse. Lots of things lined up to make this happen. My sister, Lorna, who you'll hear from later, she was working as a senior occupational therapist with a group of care homes and had some miniature ponies visit the home with some very interesting results. My vice chairman, Jerry Porter, has a therapy dog, and was working with a local care home. And then we had a pony come to us on loan called Mr. Dibbles, which is the best name ever for a pony. But unfortunately, Mr. Dibbles wasn't going to be able to cover his costs by managing a full riding workload. And we were thinking, was there another way that we could use the pony to cover his costs, but still make a difference? And so the slightly offbeat idea of afternoon tea with Mr. Dibbles was born. So we spoke to the dementia care home that Jerry was working with and asked them if they would like to come along and join us for tea with a pony. And they were absolutely so supportive, and they invited their residents to come along with their family members and watch a lesson. So the plan was very much that they would watch the group lesson and then go out through the stable block and into the sensory walk. So I accidentally baked the best scones I've ever made in my life, and they had tea and cake and watched the group lesson. The children in that group lesson were fascinated by what was going on in the gallery and were waving, and there was waving back from the gallery. So there was that gorgeous intergenerational connection, which we hadn't quite expected. The volunteers spontaneously brought the ponies up to meet the people having their tea and cake. And if we click on to the next slide, please. We went out into our sensory walk, so lots of fresh air and beautiful surroundings. But that's where the memories started. We had one whose father and grandfather had both raced at Cheltenham Racecourse as amateur jockeys, and the family was able to share the excitement and pride of that day. We had one who'd grown up on a horse-drawn barge, and feeling the leather reminded her of how heavy the harnesses were and how difficult the locks were, and those memories were chatted through. We had one lady who'd grown up in London during the Blitz, and she was relocated to Gloucestershire, and meeting the pony sparked back memories of growing up in London in the Blitz, and again she shared those with her family member. My favourite one was a wonderful lady. She was 103, and she was with her niece, and she was a long way down the route of dementia and didn't really communicate very much. But meeting the pony sparked a funny little story about her coming home from school to find her brother hoovering the pony, which of course was cutting edge technology in those days. But the niece hadn't heard that story before, and it was a golden memory for her at the end of what was a very difficult journey of living with her aunt with dementia. If we go on to the next story, next slide. I apologise profusely for the standard of this photo. I took it and I was laughing so much because this slide shows how everybody was having fun together, sharing. So the coach is enjoying it. The pony absolutely loved it, but also the whole family was able to experience something together, facilitated by the pony. And if we go on to the next slide, again, this is one of my favourite pictures because it shows how deeply entrenched pony memories are. And this lady had memories of childhood times with ponies, and you can see how she just touches her heart. And I love this image of it. If we go on to the next slide, you may remember Sharon talking in the video. Now, I remember the conversation that I had with Sharon after the first session. She was very moved, quite tearful, and she thanked us so much for doing the session. It's really hard for the families of people living with dementia, and she found that the pony facilitated a connection which meant that she could join back with him in his world. And that really struck with me. This is an opportunity for us to support, excuse me, people to join back together. In fact, they became very much regular visitors, and COVID has been so hard, people being separated, not being able to see people. And as we start to come out of COVID and learn to live with it, this is an opportunity for people to do something. Every RDA group is very different and unique, but they've got so many things in common, which is ponies at the heart of everything that they do, but also understanding the nature of disability. And this provides a safe activity for people to start to go out. In fact, we started back and we've had sessions back in the arena, and we've had, I spoke to somebody just yesterday about how they want to do something with their loved one, but they're very nervous about going elsewhere, out into a cafe or a garden centre, something like that. And this really is a safe and controlled activity for people to do. And if we go to the next slide. This is Annie. I have a lot of favourite memories, but actually this is one of my favourites because it encapsulates everything that makes Tea with the Pony so special. I spoke to Annie about this image and asked if she wouldn't mind becoming our poster girl, which she was thrilled about. But it didn't stop there. Annie went back after the session to the care home and painted a portrait of the pony. The care home called me and said the residents had been talking about it with such enthusiasm. Could we possibly send a box of stuff up for them to use? So we sent a box of hay, some tail clippings, some old brushes. We didn't send some manure, but I was tempted. And that box came out for weeks afterwards. And it helped generate meaningful conversations and really happy memories of the session. But there was hidden benefits as well. The ponies loved it. But also for some of our volunteers, one of our coaches, she had a very long and difficult journey with her mum's dementia. And actually supporting these sessions has helped her navigate her own grief. And she had a really deep understanding of what dementia was like and was able to help with the session from her knowledge. There was new opportunities as well for people to volunteer. COVID has meant that a lot of people haven't been volunteering with RDA because so many of us have been shut. And Sonia, she won't mind me sharing her story. She's in her 80s, and actually it's difficult for her to do helping with the ponies on the floor. But she's now able to host these sessions. She was at the arena yesterday hosting a session for us and was thrilled to be back out and making a difference. So there's other ways that this session is another force for good. So it really is that head-heart. We shared the story on Facebook about how fantastic these sessions were. And like I said, every RDA is different, but they've all got ponies, and anybody who's been involved with RDA for any amount of time knows that there's cake somewhere along the line. And so this is a really good way to celebrate cake and RDA as well. We've worked using lessons that we're already doing. And it's another way to make a difference. And funding has been hard for RDA groups. You can't furlough a pony. You can't pop them in the cupboard. There's costs that they've had. So this will also support our core, which is our riding. So if we go to the next slide. So Mike came and did a piece with us and spent a morning with us. And he has absolutely become a champion for us. He understood how special these sessions were. And after Mike's piece on Breakfast News, the amount of inquiries we got was almost overwhelming. We had inquiries from Kent, Scotland, and actually we had a minibus come every month, all the way from Aylesbury, because they wanted to do it, which is why I'm really excited to get this out there nationally. The demand is definitely there, and we look forward to welcoming people to come, not just as care homes, but as individuals with just a partner or a carer. So Mike's been in contact with me and he's really hoping to join us in the Q&A, but he's sent a video just in case the technology doesn't work. So Anna, over to you to play Mike's video.
Hi there, it's Mike Bushell. Hello to everybody at the Tea with a Pony conference. I just want to say that I saw firsthand a couple of years ago now, when I did a piece for BBC Breakfast on the whole idea, how incredible and transforming it was for so many people, especially those living with dementia and their families, to come along, have a cup of tea, socialise with other people in the same position, but then have the interaction with a wonderful, calm, beautiful pony. It brought memories back for some. I remember them saying that to me. How he's saying it suddenly sparked memories and conversations that wouldn't have happened without that. That is so important for someone living with dementia. And it helped them come to life again. It was incredible to see that. I saw that with my own eyes. Several people, once they'd had that interaction with the pony, the calmness of the animal, the aura of the animal, the stroking, and just the presence being there, it brought them back to life. It connected with something, maybe a memory they had when they were younger, whatever it was, it reignited something. I can't stress the importance of that enough. And it's great that it's coming back. It needs to happen far more across the country, not just in those local areas, because you can see the impact it has on someone's life and for the families as well. It's so important and wonderful to suddenly see your loved one waking up again. That's what it was like. So thank you for all you do, Claire and the team there. I just think it's fantastic and so pleased to have had that little glimpse and hopefully part of it in the future as well. Take care, have a good day, and I'll speak probably later. Cheers.
Thanks so much, Claire. That was brilliant. There's some really lovely photos in there as well that are really emotive. I know you said the quality's not great, but I think they really sum up what you're doing really, really well. And you get that sense of that the smell of the pony that people really appreciate. And I think for lots of us is really emotive anyway, and for people with dementia must be amazing. Next, we're going to hear from Lorna Cook, who, as a retired occupational therapist, is going to talk about her perspective and the picture of meaningful activities, and also about the Dementia Friends initiative. Thanks, Lorna.
Hello, everybody. Hello. I'm so happy to be here talking about this. It's one of the most lovely things I think I've ever been involved with. And you'll have heard already from Claire that we're sisters. So as the Tea with the Pony was sort of starting and we realised that it had the potential to touch so many lives in a positive way, and the working party was being put together, I was saying, you need an occupational therapist on that group, Claire. So that would be me then. That's how that came about. And it's the right place for an OT because we are experts at making meaningful activities accessible to people by whatever means it happens to be, adapting the activity, removing the barriers, whatever it happens to be. So I'm really happy to be involved. And for me, this is about thinking, how do we join up what we've got here? What we've got are these fantastic yards with these well-trained, calm and lovely ponies, the enthusiastic volunteers who would like to get involved in working with people who are living with dementia, and the people who are living with dementia out there who really need this in their lives. So how do we join them together? And in a way, this is a start. We're talking to you, we're telling you all about it. And the other thing that we've done is that we've produced some guidance for RDA groups who want to get involved. This is guidance that's there to be supportive and encouraging. It's not prescriptive, because as Claire says, every single yard is completely different. We're here to help, and we've tried to share every single thing that we've learned, but ultimately it's a unique situation for everybody. Now, a large part of that guidance is risk assessment. Occupational therapists love risk assessing meaningful activities, so that's one for me, definitely. And if you think about RDA as an organisation, it's not risk averse. Think about what it does. It brings together extremely vulnerable people and extremely large animals and does wonderful things in that regard. So every single yard has got its operational risk assessment. These folks are expert at managing risk. So thinking about a tea with a pony risk assessment, it just sits on top of what's already there. We thought about it really carefully, and there are three main threads to risk assessing specifically for tea with a pony. The first is making sure that people have got the information that they need about what it's like living with dementia, what that really means. Now, most people have got some personal experience, but on top of that, I absolutely cannot recommend highly enough the Dementia Friends initiative, which is part of the Alzheimer's Society. You can still do it in these COVID times. It's online, there's videos and online sessions, but it provides really good quality, practical, sensible information that will help improve people's confidence when it comes to working with people who are living with dementia. My personal view is that the entire world would be a better place if everybody was a dementia friend. So it can't hurt to have as many people as possible doing it. So that's the first bit, information. The second bit is really detailed, careful, thorough risk assessment and management of every single aspect of the activity. And this is where the uniqueness of each setting comes into play. I had a lovely conversation with Christine in Northern Ireland a couple of weeks ago. She's there, she's just ready to start, but she had some concerns about her arena surface. And we talked about how that might impact somebody, for example, with mobility issues, such as the shuffling gait that people living with Parkinson's disease often have to deal with. How would that impact wheelchairs, walking aids? How would it impact? So the recommendation was that she get a colleague and they get out there onto the arena floor and they role play these things and do the learning from that and problem solve in accordance with what they've learned. And then the last bit, so they've got information, the detailed work, and then the last bit, which is absolutely crucial, is the partnership working. And that's about building the relationship with the person living with dementia and their carers, their loved ones. And in Christine's case, actually inviting them to the arena so they can see for themselves. And then you can end up with all the different risk assessments dovetailing together. The RDA operational one, the tea with the pony one, the care home, the one for that individual. And when you've done all of that, you've done all that detailed work, then your risk assessment would pass what I like to think of as my room full of peers rule of thumb. And that is simply, we cannot eliminate risk. If something does go wrong, if there is an untoward incident, and I was to tell a room full of my peers exactly what had happened, if they would go, I can see how that happened actually. Obviously you do the learning and you make the changes accordingly. But if you would tell a room full of your peers what happened and anybody would go, oh, why didn't you think of, why didn't you do, then your risk assessment wasn't actually up to scratch. But if you go through that process, the information, the detailed work and the partnership working, you'll be bob on to give it a go. Now, we've heard a bit about the value of these activities from both Claire and from Mike. And for me, there's an added layer, which is, I think it is very important to be mindful that a diagnosis of dementia is in itself a palliative diagnosis. That makes every single day so important. And it's important to remember and be very aware that while the cognitive memory can be very fragile and can be lost, the feelings will remain. And it's the feelings that these activities invoke that have the really powerful knock-on effects. Being able to connect with your husband again after he's been living in care for a while. Transformational. It's absolutely transformational in terms of those relationships. And the last thing I want to say is, you know, you talk about RDA has got riding at its core. Of course, it has got riding at its core, but it's so much more than that. It's actually working with horses and with humans to change lives for the better. And when I was in Singapore all those years ago, involved with RDA, I like to think it was me that coined the phrase that RDA is not like magic, it is magic. And for me, that is never more true than when we're looking at this tea with a pony. That's me done.
Thank you so much. That was lovely. There's quite a few bits this morning where I keep feeling myself welling up. So, Ali Reid is going to talk about her research, which is I read this in some detail a while ago and I was really impressed with it. So it's really lovely to have her presenting it to us. Thank you, Ali.
Oh, thanks, Meg. I'll just wait for the slides to come out. Right, yeah, so I'm really pleased to be here this morning to sort of like talk about Tea with the Pony, and also the research that I did looking at equine assisted activities beneficial for people living with dementia. I conducted my research with the horses actually at Cotswold RDA. So as ever, huge thanks for Claire and the team, including the volunteers there who helped when I was doing this. Absolutely brilliant, and couldn't have asked for more help from them. So that was great. I personally first became interested in this topic probably about 5-6 years ago, when I began my training to become an equine facilitated learning practitioner. During the course of the training, I kind of like noticed that the examples that we were being shown and taught about never seemed to mention any potential benefits for people with dementia. So I kind of like thought I'd do my own then, and sort of like try and find out a bit more about it. I was studying to do a research master's in anthrozoology at Rda University at the time, so it was a perfect opportunity to sort of like follow this interest and find out a little bit more, really. I did this on the basis of very little personal experience of dementia, so it was a huge learning curve for me. And Lucy, if we could just have the next slide, please. These are some of the facts and figures that sort of like I came across when I started to do my research, and I just wanted to show them just as a little bit of context to and background to the scale of dementia, not just globally but also in this country. And it shows why research into dementia and finding out about meaningful activities and improving well-being and quality of life of people living with dementia is so important. But it's not on the slide there. But what I also find really interesting is for every 4 researchers into cancer, there is just 1 researcher looking at dementia. So it kind of like puts that into the context as to where a lot of the focus lies. So next slide, please, Lucy. So this was my research aim. With the greater emphasis on personal care and meaningful activities, as I've just mentioned, to me it seemed like a really timely idea to investigate what benefits, if any, there were going to be from involving people with dementia with equine assisted activities. What's important to note here is that my research looked at equine assisted activities. I was not looking at equine assisted therapies, which tend to have a more sort of like defined goals. So my sessions were very much done for enjoyment and well-being. Although I have to say, unlike the actual tea with a pony, I'm afraid neither of my participants got tea or cake. So maybe I missed a trick there. Lucy, next slide, please. Now, I purposefully decided that my research design would involve people my participants coming out from their place of residence to the riding centre at Cotswold RDA, and also to a green space session. So altogether I held 3 sessions, the first being the green space session. This was held in a local public park which had multiple points of interest. There was a lake and quite a large children's play area there as well. And then the horse sessions were held at Cotswold RDA. The activities there you can see on the table during the green space session were walking, whilst at the riding centre, stroking, grooming and leading with the sessions, with the activities rather, that I wanted to investigate. I think I made life slightly more difficult for myself in that I wanted to try and establish what difference having a horse made to the person living with dementia. One piece of research I did come across prior to doing my own research took place in America, and the researchers there were saying what they couldn't make the difference between was whether or not it was the novel environment of the stables that was resulted in the improvements, or whether or not it was the actual horses themselves. So I decided to have 1 session without any horses and then 2 sessions with the horses. And all sessions were filmed, and I'd identified 12 different behaviours that I was going to analyse. And then I also had further analysis done by a dementia care specialist as well. Next slide, please, Lucy. So in my design, I took two measurements. I'm really keen to see how we can measure what the impacts are of this work. So I did 2 measures. The first there on the left-hand side is the quality of life Alzheimer's disease measure, which is widely used. It's done by both the person with dementia and also their primary carer. So for each of the 13 elements there, they gain different scoring with regard to poor, fair, good, or excellent. And I did this prior to any of the sessions starting, and then once all of the sessions had been completed 5 weeks later, I revisited this measurement as well. So I had a good before and after measure of the quality of life. The other form there on the right is the individual session forms. These were completed again by both the participant and their carer immediately before each session. So that's the green space session and the 2 horse sessions as well. What I was keen to understand there was how they felt at the start of the session and how they felt at the end of the session, and what they did or didn't like about those sessions, each session. Next slide, please. I had two participants, I decided to, because of the lack of research in this particular area, I wanted to do case studies so I could try to understand the nuances involved in doing this type of work. So I purposefully kept my study small and had two participants. I think it's interesting, just a few points to note on the characteristics of my participants. Both were female, both had mixed dementia. One had moderate dementia and one had advanced dementia. One lived in the family home and the other in a residential care home. Both would describe themselves as animal lovers, but only one had horse experience. The idea of the research wasn't to compare the two participants and their results. It was to get individual data from each of the participants. Next slide, please, Lucy. So with regard to the quality of life Alzheimer's disease measures, so that was the grey form on the left-hand side of the screen in the previous but one slide. These were the results that I got following the 5 weeks of the of my study. Now, looking at those, there is no overall improvement on the scores before and after the sessions, and so from that you could infer that in terms of this particular measure, for these particular participants, neither the green space or the horse activities were beneficial. Next slide, please, Lucy. So then when I looked at the results for the session form measure, there was a difference on these. So if you look at the participants on the park session, they themselves self-reported as they didn't feel any different from the start of the session to the end of the session. And a similar situation there also for their carers for that session. When you look to the two horse sessions, certainly these demonstrate that for the participants self-reporting, there was improvement in mood after those sessions, and also what the carer A also identified an improvement in the participants' mood at the end of the first session. Unfortunately, it's not a complete set of data there. Participant B was unable to complete the session 3, the second session with the horse. So it's unfortunate that didn't happen, but I think is one thing that has to be made clear is the well-being of each participant on each day was paramount, and if they felt unable to or didn't want to undertake the session, then the session was cancelled. So I think the takeaway from that is that no improvements were reported after the green space session, but the improvement in mood was reported after the horse session. And the next slide, please, Lucy. From those session feedback forms, this is a sort of like a sort of like roundup of the different comments that came back from the participants and the carers. The ones to the left of the screen relate to the green space session, whilst those to the right of the screen relate to the horse sessions. So there's interesting feedback from both of those. Things like during the park session, things that weren't liked were the unlevel walking surface, and some people were a bit pushy in there. But also things like watching the children in the play area, being outside in the fresh air, and the carer comment at the bottom there, being quite absent, and it's difficult to get her to pay attention. Again, those provide extra insight into how the person with dementia may have been feeling on that particular day. I think my favourite quote from the ones on the right hand side of the screen relating to the horse session was that the people were friendly. It's been lovely, and it's better than sitting at home watching the TV. I think that's, you know, that's a really lovely quote to have got there. But also the quote there around giving me confidence, and it was fun to see the animals enjoying themselves as much as we were. Next slide, please, Lucy. So this slide it's quite a busy slide. There's quite a lot of information on this, so I'll just try and break it down a little bit. So it provides a snapshot of the analysis that I did from the filming that I undertook as part of the research. So on the table on the left-hand side is the list of the behaviours, the identified behaviours that I was looking for when I was analysing the footage. So, for example, the one there at the top, agitated behaviour, during so this is for participant A, session 2, which was one of the horse sessions. So during that session, there were 3 activities: stroking, grooming and leading. And during the filming, no instances of agitated behaviour were seen on the film. But the ones I want to draw your attention to are the ones that they're highlighted in circled in red: the laughing, smiling and talking. So you can see that the laughing activity when stroking, laughing when doing the stroking activity lasted, were identified for 13 seconds. For grooming, it was 16 seconds, and for leading, it was 20 seconds. And then going down to smiling, the smiling 21 seconds during stroking, 20 during grooming, and then 28 during leading, and then talking 8, 2 and 13 respectively. So on this particular analysis, the leading activity produced more time laughing and smiling and talking to the horse. There's a huge amount of other sort of like data that also sits behind this, and there's numerous different ways to cut this particular data. But for this particular participant on this particular day, on this session, the leading seemed to be, the grooming and the leading activities seemed to be the most preferential to this particular participant in terms of the duration of the defined behaviours. Interestingly, in the third session, the next session after this, the participant didn't want to undertake the leading. So obviously we didn't undertake the leading, but again, that just emphasises the importance of letting the participant lead what's undertaken. It's no point trying to, just because I wanted to see her lead, it would be unethical of me to try and make her lead. So we just didn't get that data, unfortunately. Next slide, please, Lucy. So just a few conclusions from my research. It's very difficult to generalise from my findings. It was a small sample. It was done over a short period of time, just 5 weeks. The heterogeneity of the dementia population, everybody that experiences dementia experiences it in their own way. And so just because my particular participants had particular reactions on the day doesn't mean to say that other participants with mixed dementia of a similar age, with similar experience of animals, will have those same responses. There's also a wide range of variables in the environment, but the equine assisted activities did appear to improve the immediate quality of life for people living with dementia more readily than the green space activities did. So it may prove beneficial to some people with dementia. And click the next one, please. these are just a few lessons that I learnt, which I thought might be quite useful for any groups or looking at starting Tea with the Pony sessions. The importance of allowing individuals to acclimatise to the environment. It's a new environment, new sounds, new for them to experience. As has been mentioned before, it's a highly sensory nature, this experience. That's part of the enjoyment, but that can also be part of the difficulty. So there needs to be flexibility built in. Involving the carer in activity wherever possible. Both Claire and Lorna have spoken about that. I've already mentioned about being led by the participant. Keep it simple as well. And for me, as a researcher, recording what happens is paramount, because it's an iterative process, and it can improve the nature of the sessions and therefore the nature of the experience for the person with dementia and their carer. And next one, Lucy. So yeah, I was hoping that I would answer the questions that I had in my mind before starting the research. In fact, it just led me to more questions that I would like to continue researching with. How long do these benefits last? What impact does the stage of dementia have? Different behaviours that could be analysed and alternative activities, and how this could be incorporated into equine assisted therapy. So there's more directive goals. And then also how to record and measure those impacts. And then just my final slide, Lucy, as I mentioned, heaps of other data behind this. And if anybody would like to sort of like find out a bit more, you can contact me there. But I just wanted to sort of like leave you with this quote I came across recently from a carer who is looking after her mother who has dementia. And the quote is, "With cancer, the healthcare system pulls out all the stops and it becomes a fight to conquer. With dementia, the fight is over when you walk out of the GP's office and mostly you're on your own." Now, I think being able to attend a Tea with a Pony session may just help people living with dementia, as well as their carers, feel less alone. So thanks very much for listening, and back to Meg.
Thanks so much, Sally. And I think your last comment's so true, that that it's such a gloomy diagnosis for so many people, and I think anyone that can do anything to improve that for people is doing an amazing job. And I think it's really important. And I think the sort of glimpses of life where people with dementia are happier or engaged or communicating better, I think they're really valuable. And I hope as a GP that my patients get a little bit more support than that, but I'm aware that we're all pushed for time, and maybe they don't. So thank you. So we're moving on to questions and answers. So just to reiterate for those of you that might have joined late, if you want to...
Oh, there's Mike.
Sorry, Claire?
Oh, sorry, there's Mike.
Oh, this Mike appeared. If any of you want to pose questions, if you go to the Q&A bubble and type them in, and then Anna's going to host the questions for us. Thanks, Anna.
Thanks very much. I've just got a couple of questions to start off with, kind of for clarification. So the first one I think would be going towards Lorna. So what was the name of the place where you were talking about dementia information and dementia training?
Oh, that's the Alzheimer's Society's Dementia Friends initiative, and it's all up there on the Alzheimer's website. You can still do it even in these COVID times. I think there's a video to watch, and then they're running online sessions. It's well worth doing. In the olden days before COVID, you could have a session and a group of people would get together. Once you are a dementia friend, if you want to, you can do a bit more and become a dementia champion and go ahead and deliver this training in different settings. But I don't think they're doing that at the moment because of the pandemic. And I'm just very aware that we've got a man in our midst. So I wanted to say hello to Mike, and he's vanished. He's back.
I'm back, sorry. Hi, how are you doing? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, great
stuff. Just joined us in time for the Q&A.
Oh, great stuff, yes. 10 past 10, it managed to work from the middle of this forest in Hampshire. I'm doing this challenged at the moment. So can you hear me okay? Is the signal okay? It should be, because I've come up to a hill.
Yeah, no, it's great. Mike, welcome. Good to see you.
Oh, great to see you, everybody.
Actually, do you want to just give us a couple of thoughts about how fantastic the sessions are that you saw?
Yeah, I was blown away. So I did a piece. We brought the BBC Breakfast cameras along a couple of years ago, and we filmed a session, Tea with Pony, and various people came along, and the impact it had on families was incredible. There was one lady who said her husband's memory had come back, and the ponies and the cuppa, of course, and the conversation and the chat and the socialization, it really helped bring her husband's memory back and sparked all sorts of memories of when he was involved with horses at a younger age. And it was amazing. She said, I think it almost brought him back to life in a way. And I saw that time and time again, just the contact with the ponies, their presence, but also the relaxed, calm atmosphere meant they could really relax and feel at home and feel comfortable, even with cameras there, which can never be different. It can be difficult to have cameras in your face, but they were so relaxed, it made such a difference. So I was really blown away and amazed by it. It was incredible, the power of just the calming influence of a pony in that environment. And also I think the other people around them as well helped. Well, hello?
Brilliant. Thank you so much,
Can you
Mike.
hear me okay?
Yeah, so we're going to have to move on to a few questions now.
Yes, of course.
There's a technical one for Ali. So what does MMSE stand for? That was on some of your slides, I think.
Yes, sorry, it stands for mini mental state examination, and it's one where it's a way of measuring which stage of dementia any individual is at.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Ali. I've got a bit of a more wide-ranging question, probably to you, Claire, and to Lorna. We're thinking about obviously being a post-COVID world now. So how do these sessions take place with all the kind of COVID precautions we need to consider now?
So shall I go on that one? So I'm thrilled to say we've got people back at Cotswold already. So it is possible. And actually, for me, talking to the family that came along, it's been horrible not being able to see people. And actually, they were thrilled to be able to come out, do something together in a safe and accepting way. And yeah, no, we're back open, so it is possible that you just need to build in the social distancing and the usual COVID security that we've got. But for me, I just wouldn't want to get the word out there, you know, to care homes and to individuals. You know, this is an opportunity. And if your local RDA group hasn't considered it, then the RDA UK has got all the support there to do it. So spread the word amongst the care homes and individuals.
Thanks. Lorna, have you got anything to add to that?
No, I think Claire's hit the nail on the head, but I think going back to that risk assessment, because it is so thorough and done so carefully, this sort of activity is, well, to my mind, it's safer than going to the co-op these days.
Other supermarkets are available, obviously.
Excellent. I've got another question, which probably is for you, Claire, about how much does this cost?
Yeah, so it was really interesting when I started to look at activity networks. Their budgets vary wildly. And so what we thought was actually keep it affordable. People have given us donations, but what we used to do was charge £5 per person. And that's what we're doing post-COVID, because that's affordable, but also it's a new income stream, which will help support the costs of the riding for the disabled and to make a huge difference. So we sat it at about £5 and it covered the costs, but also was a new revenue stream, which is important.
Brilliant. And then I've got a bit of a follow-up question about how long sessions last.
So it does depend on the individual, but we found 45 minutes was about right for most of our participants. I'm not an expert on dementia, that's why I've got all these wonderful people around me, but that is what we found on a practical basis.
Brilliant. And then I've got a question here, I think probably for Lucy, about how many RDA groups are already participating and what our plans are for the future.
Yeah, so we have groups up in Scotland, Northern Ireland, obviously Clare in the Cotswolds, and so we have a few pockets of groups, mostly over most of the UK. So our plan is to basically have as many groups involved as possible. Speaking with a friend just in this local area, care homes are crying out for dementia-based outlets for activities. So this kind of, again, hits the nail on the head for that. So yeah, if you are a group watching and want to know more, please just send me an email and I can talk you through how to get started.
And just to add, your email is lwake at rda.org.uk.
It is, yeah.
I can see in the chat that actually one of our huge supporters, Simon from the Order of St John's group of care homes, had some comments. But Simon, you need to put the question in the chat box. Simon and his group of care homes have been real regular supporters of ours, and it's really been a lovely activity. They've come as a home, and I do think we've had some people bring their family member along individually.
Brilliant, thanks Claire. I've got a question now for Ali. So what research would you conduct next? Researchers always need to do more, don't they? And how would you change or alter if you could? Do you think additional funding will help with increasing sample size and this impact this research could truly have? Followed up by brilliant job, well done.
Well, thank you. Much more research, is required. And there's so many different aspects of the research that could be done. Things like I'd be interested also to measure impacts on the carers and the family members as well. What does experiencing these sessions and seeing their family member have these experiences, how does it help them? Does it make a difference to them? I'd also like to do sort of longitudinal studies. So my research was a short-term research. I think it would be really interesting to do much longer-term research, and obviously with increased numbers of people as well. Funding would always be great if there's funding out there to do that research. Yes, it's as I mentioned, and I think I put on one of the slides. That there just isn't that, as compared to sort of like cancer research, funding for dementia research is a lot less. So any additional funding that is available, I think it's really important that there's lots of anecdotal evidence for how animals can improve the lives and well-being of people with dementia, but there needs to be more rigorous research, with consistent measures being done, to try and actually tease out what these benefits are and how they can actually be improved and measured and taken to a wider population. At the moment, this sort of work is being done, by the RDA and small pockets elsewhere. There's a huge amount of potential for it to happen elsewhere, but it does need to be backed up by the research as well.
Thanks so much, Ali. So I've got another sort of more practical question about actually where this activity happens, about whether it happens at an RDA centre or riding centre, or whether actually it can happen in care homes. So Claire, I think that's probably best for you.
Well, for me, it would be up to the individual RDA groups if they wanted to take a pony out to the care home. For me, I believe that actually this is just the most amazing activity that uses our riding lessons that we're already doing. It gives the ponies a bit of extra TLC. They love all the fuss. So for me, I think I would prefer to be spreading the word to local care homes, to individuals, to bring them into the RDA group. So that would be for me. But obviously, if somebody did want to take a pony out to a care home, I'm sure that RDA UK would be able to support with the risk assessment.
Thank you. And then a bit of a follow-up to that. Is there any type of breed of horse that you would recommend? Is it small ponies like Shetlands, or is it just down to temperament?
Shall I pick up on that one again?
Yes, please.
All of our horses love it. So we've got a real mix of the traditional roughy tufty cob types. We've got some Welshies, we've got some fell ponies. We've got a very smart dressage horse, and without exception, from our tiny little 11-hander right up to our 16-hand dressage pony, dressage horse, they all love it. It's the same with any other RDA group. It's the ponies, it's the temperaments, their natural curiosity and their training. And it is that contact between those well-trained, gorgeous ponies that makes the difference.
Brilliant, thanks. I've got another one for you, lots of practical questions coming in. So how many sort of participants do you have in one group? And also you talked about the length of time being 45 minutes. How much is with the pony and how much is tea?
Okay, well, so at Cotswold, and they would come in whilst a group lesson is on. So they'd eat the tea and cake. That mitigates a lot of hand washing, because if there's pony touching and eating cake. So the tea and cake would be about 15 minutes whilst they're watching the lesson. And then there would be the one-to-ones with the ponies, the up close and personal, the really special time is about half an hour.
Brilliant.
And I think, sorry, I just wanted to add one bit, if that's okay. As we produce the guidance, there are very few hard and fast rules, but one that we really have as the strongest possible recommendation is that every single person who's living with dementia who comes along has a one-to-one person with them, whether it's their carer or their loved one, but it must be somebody who knows them really, really well. And that's important to make sure that the activity remains a positive experience. Ali made mention of, giving people time to settle in and what a multi-sensory experience it is coming into a yard. And that can be overwhelming for somebody who's living with dementia. So there's very few hard and fast rules, but that kind of is one, in a way, that everybody needs somebody with them who knows them well enough to be able to identify before it becomes too much for them, really. Sorry, I just thought I'd chip in.
No, that's a very valid point, Lorna, and it's absolutely true. But also, actually, for people bringing people out, particularly in the post-COVID world, actually it can be quite distressing for the family member or the carer. Whereas actually RDA groups, not only do they like cake and have ponies, without exception, they are welcoming and understanding of disabilities. So that actually gives the experience, the confidence to the carer or the loved one that actually it's going to be okay. Yeah. And we can recognise any challenges and roll with it.
Thank you very much. I've got a question now kind of on the practical side for Lucy. So is this covered by RDA Insurance?
It is, as long as you obviously go through those unfortunate paperwork points. So you will have to fill out the activity extension form and send that into our group support. There is the risk assessment that you have to show us a copy of that you've gone through, which Lorna mentioned, which is on top of your existing risk assessment. And then we do ask that you attend our risk assessment workshop, because that helps iron out all those questions and problem solving, troubleshooting moments. Lorna very kindly has given up her time to do those workshops in the evening with us. And then, of course, the Dementia Friends Initiative, please do those online sessions for all your volunteers. They really are helpful to give you that insight.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Lucy. We have got more questions coming in, but I think we're going to run out of time, because I think we'd like to finish about 10:30 as planned. I've got just one final point, really. So our ambition around this is to grow the number of groups doing this considerably. We have a handful of groups, as Lucy said, across the different home countries delivering this, but we'd like more RDA groups to do it. So we'll be encouraging them to get involved. But also, if you are from a care home, feel free to get in contact with your local RDA group and ask whether this is something that they do, because that might spur you to work together to develop something that is right and bespoke for you, whether that is going to the centre, or in the odd occasion maybe bringing ponies out as well. From our point of view, we have this wonderful resource. We have these ponies, we have these horses, we have fantastic volunteers who want to be involved and want to learn. And so actually this is a way that we can use all our facilities and our resources to support people living with dementia, their carers and their families. And also from our point of view, we're not actually having to stress the horses out, so that actually they've got space and time to offer their core ridden sessions to those riders or drivers or vaulters, I should say, with disability. So for us, it's an absolute win-win situation. I'd like to hand over now to Meg, who would like to try and do some summing up of today. I don't envy you that. So over to you, Meg.
Thanks, Anna. There's obviously loads of questions that people have still got. So if you direct them to Lucy at lwake@rda.org.uk, and she'll be able to help you or pass them on to whoever can help you with them. We've talked about loads of things. So we've talked about the sort of psychological aspects of this. We've talked about some of the practical aspects of this. And we've talked about Lorna talked about the fact that dementia is a palliative diagnosis, and actually for carers and for the person with dementia, it's such a difficult diagnosis. And it's amazing to see that there is so much enthusiasm and appetite to have an impact on people living with dementia. And I think that's particularly, feels particularly poignant at a time when so many people with dementia have had such a difficult time. And I really admire everyone's sort of energy and their sort of capacity to consider doing this going forwards. And when you talk to people who are not involved with horses about involving people with dementia with horses, they immediately throw their hands up in horror and say, why on earth would you do that? It's so risky. And actually, for those of us that love our horses and spend time with our horses and see how much value they can add to people's life, I think this conference has been really good in sort of consolidating that. So thank you so much to all the speakers. Thank you so much to Anna and Lucy for organising this and arranging the technical aspects of it, which I think worked really well over a platform that I know lots of you are very, very good at, and some of us are less familiar with. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us all this morning.